So, welcome to our webinar today. It is Mental Health and Setting the Standard with ISO 45003. My name is Flora Neville and I am hosting this today alongside Chris, who is going to take you through the bulk of the slides and talk to you in more depth. So, thank you for joining us. And if you can pop on to the next slide, Chris, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so what we're talking about today then, the basics. How often do you think about mental health as an employer? Now, you know, health and safety is nothing new. I think historically we've focused a lot on safety, but now there is a huge focus on health, as there should be, and the health and safety exec have absolutely made health, well-being, mental health a priority in their goals and aims and areas of focus as well. So for that reason alone, you need to be thinking as an employer and focusing on mental health. So it needs to be on your agenda. It also ensures that if if you're not looking after mental health, you're not looking after well-being within your organisation, then it is going to cause a problem. You know, it needs to be a focus. It needs to be something that everybody is working on and making sure that it's properly set up in your organisation as well. The growth of poor mental health and employee turnover, unfortunately, we do see that, and there's lots of statistics out there to prove that employee turnover, unfortunately, is pretty high, and in certain industries higher than it's ever been. And it's, if you look after everybody and everybody has good mental health, you feel like they're part of something, good well-being, they're engaged, all the rest of it, then the idea is that you're reducing your employee turnover. It's encouraging retention, keeping the good employees in your organisation that you want to keep. Those are the people that help you run the business. At the end of the day, your biggest asset in your organisation are your team. You can't run the business out of teams, so you need to make sure that your team are being properly looked after under health and safety. Links between mental and physical health. We know there absolutely are links between mental and physical health. Again, there's lots of stats out there to prove all of that. So again, it's something that we need to be aware of, be thinking about, and be mindful of. The details then, spotting the signs. And the thing with this is, there are lots and lots of signs, and we could talk for an hour at least just on that alone. It's being mindful of that and knowing and spotting and monitoring and making sure that the rest of your team and your managers and supervisors and team leaders and whatever else, they can also spot the signs. Are they trained to do that? Do they know then if they do spot the signs, what do they do? What happens then? Money on the mind. Obviously, ISO 45003, but it's here. What is it? So Chris is going to talk to you about what it is and also the benefits of ISO 45003 as well. And as I said, we will have time as well for questions and answers. So lots to get through. So with that, I'm going to hand you straight over to Chris to introduce himself and to take you through the slides. But as I say, anything at all, pop it in the chat box, guys. I'm going to keep an eye on that in the background and pick that up as and when. But thanks, Chris.
Hello, everyone. My name's Chris. Chris Bass. I am a technical specialist and consultant that works for ISO Certification Limited, for Citation ISO Certification Limited, sorry. I specialize on the implementation and auditing of ISO management systems. And as Flora's been saying today, we're going to be having a little look into ISO 45003, not to be confused with ISO 45001. There's a reason why it's fairly similar, because the two standards are fairly similar in themselves. So the whole purpose of any ISO management system is there for continual improvement. It's there to identify things, corrective actions and remedies in place, and to continually improve as a business. Obviously, there are standards out there such as your quality-based management systems, such as ISO 9001, environmental, which is 14, and then 45001, which is health and safety. Obviously, with this one, we're going to be looking into what we call, or what the standard refers to as psychosocial risk. And for us to be able to improve, what I thought it would be best for us to start with is to look at some stats in which mental health can actually affect organizations and their operational performance. So nearly 1 million workers 2022 and 2023 suffered from stress, depression, and anxiety, which are all psychosocial risks. 17.1 million working days were lost because of that. And I think mental health is kind of a silent illness in the sense that it's harder to spot than a physical illness or ailment. So it's quite important. There's sections that we're going to talk about coming up, which refers to how we identify. Workers with depression and anxiety lose a quarter of the year in productivity, typically with conditions and mental illness such as anxiety and depression. It's never a quick fix. It's never something that off for a couple of days and they're back again. It tends to be long periods of illness and long periods of time of work. And employees are also 3 times more likely to discuss physical ailments than mental health. And this is what I was talking about. It's hard to identify. And it's important to be able to click on and see if you can spot any noticeable signs, which we'll talk about shortly. Sooner than we thought. Spotting the signs. The best way for me to describe ISO 45003 is it's a conversation standard. It is a standard that not only just to deliver as a consultant, that we talk about so many different aspects of psychosocial risk. And even with every consultancy that I deliver, I'm learning more and more every time. But being able to spot the signs of psychosocial risk is considerably more difficult than physical for obvious reasons. But where we were referencing earlier, and we were talking about how the physical can affect the mental can also affect the physical. So with one, it tends to develop into the other. But it's about really empowering your staff and making them aware, being able to sit there and communicate to your staff and say, this is what we're looking at doing. These are the signs. This is what we're looking for. But you are effectively going to be the eyes and ears for this, because as a manager that potentially has little interaction with certain areas of the business, you're probably not going to notice a change in somebody's behavior. You're probably not going to be sat in the cafeteria with them when they're discussing their social life is falling apart and having issues. Then again, the staff and the teams that they work in probably build relationships and will be able to have conversations with each other in which these issues are identified. And it's not just about identifying them and noticing what psychosocial risks are present within your workforce, but it's about what is the method of reporting these, and is there any clear communication channels in which somebody can identify an issue with a member of staff and be able to report it inwards and upwards. But typical signs for mental health and well-being tend to be the ones on screen. Anyone struggling with task changes in behavior, even just somebody being open and honest and talking about it, mood changes, whether a member of staff is normally quite easygoing, but today they've come in a little bit snappy and you're identifying that that's a change in character. There's lots of different signs, and it's about being aware and reporting these. Also, a large psychosocial risk, and one of the risks that I talk about quite a lot in consultancies is the increase of home worker considerations, and the increase in home working itself. So with any ISO standard, it's a requirement for you to identify any internal or external factors that could have an impact on the business. And for quality and health and safety and environmental issues, these can potentially be quite obvious. And there has been quite an obvious one within the mental health and well-being side of ISO, and that's the pandemic. I think we can comfortably sit here and say now that there's considerably more businesses working from home, such as myself, delivering this via a video, who doesn't have that office interaction anymore, that doesn't have that face-to-face interaction with members of staff, that is now living in their workspace or working in their home space, and that is as great as it is to have a fantastic work-life balance and not having to drive considerable distances. It can affect people differently. And one of the things that I talk about with regards to the 45003 and how certain things can affect people differently is it's very unlike the physical health of safety. And the example that I like to use is a cherry picker or a mute on a working platform. For me and one other person to go up in a platform, say 3 stories, the physical risk is exactly the same, and the physical controls for us maybe include harnessing on, putting PPE on, putting high vis, not going up in winds, and they're obvious and clear risks there. But the psychosocial risks might be quite different because even though yourselves may be fine going up in a working platform, I might have a severe fear of heights. And that might be enough to affect my mental health or not want to go into certain areas of the business or do certain tasks like working in confined spaces or working alongside specific machinery. So yeah, so there are a lot of factors. And I think home working is a big one. Some people love it, some people really don't. And I think it's quite important to identify who does and doesn't based on what their needs are and what the business needs are as well. Some of the common psychosocial risks that have appeared with working at home is that a lot of workers are finding it very difficult to find finishing. I am finished work now. I'm going to now enjoy my social time, my own personal time, because the two worlds have merged so closely together that yes, I eat my meals 4 feet from where I'm sat right now in my dining room, and that's quite common with a lot of people. And that interaction, having human interaction. Uh, so yeah, it's about having that human interaction. Lots of that can affect people mentally. But yeah, it's about considering all of the factors on the screen.
Can
Is there
I,
a question?
yeah, no, it was just somebody putting the comments there about the as well examples and activities and tools and things that they can do, and I know we use the coffee roulette one in-house, and basically what you do is you sign up to be matched with someone in the business at a random 15-minute chat, which sounds slightly, when I first read it I was like, oh, this could be interesting, and I know it's not for everybody, but actually Chris, I don't know if you've ever done it, but actually it's really interesting, kind of just a little break in your day, and it's amazing. You know, I learned a lot about our own business just by doing that. So, you know, there's huge benefits to having things like that, and also it, you know, helps with that feeling of kind of isolation, and you're the only person that feels like that, and when the reality of it is it's probably not, or you can almost guarantee you're not, but it's looking at what kind of activities you can put in place, and I think engaging with the employees and asking them as well. Obviously you probably need to make some suggestions, but I think just engaging with your employees and asking them what they would like to do, or, you know, is it a catch-up meeting, and so it's not all just work related, I think is the key thing as well, isn't it? It's having discussion around and about that, and chat around and about everything but work sometimes as well. So I think it's key to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even speaking on Harper's citation, at the moment we're engaging in a step challenge, which is put us all into teams to see who can do the most of steps to engage physical side of things, physical health and fitness, which obviously improves on mental health. Also, to be involved as part of a team, to do team challenges and team things, it gives you that sense of involvement, especially for somebody that works at home 90% of the times. But yeah, I definitely agree. In past, I've been part of organizations that have included things like training. So we would work in different departments, 1 day a month, more for the social side of things, so that the business ran better as a whole. So there was more interactions, but also from a mental health and safety perspective, that we are engaging with people, especially if we're working on roles which are quite isolated. So yeah, I definitely agree on that.
Yeah, it can make such a difference. Somebody's just put in there as well, the stats on this slide. I'm not 100% sure where they're from, Dan, but I can find out for you if you want to know those stats. Not a problem at all. They will have come from some very reliable source, I can assure you. So we can follow that up. No problem at all. That's grand. But I think the thing is, it's looking at those stats as well, isn't it? And again, I was doing another webinar this morning, and people saying that, you know, really struggling to make the break away from like your laptop or your dining room table, or you know, wherever it might be. Whereas before, you were walking out the door, you were going on the bus, you were walking, you were doing whatever. There was a huge benefit to all that, but also just the physical removal of yourself from the
Yeah.
office, isn't it? Or the site, or whatever. And I do think a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying like they really struggle to not respond to emails, or if an email pings in, because again, a lot of people maybe got it on their own phone or whatever else and stuff like that, to A, not read it, and B, not to respond to it or think about it till the next day. And I think as well, managers, it's a key one of that as well. It's when, because you know, we've all become so accessible, haven't we? You know, and sending emails at 10 o'clock at night, and I know some people work at that time, and that's fine, but what is your expectation, or what are your management's expectation of your team then? Do they expect a response, or when do they? So again, it's looking at that sometimes is really important to get a real feel for actually what your culture is and what's happening in the business a lot of the time as well, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, I think one thing that I think is fantastic for home workers is to dress for work, and the mental side of it as well. Having that defined, I'm dressed in a shirt or in a nice suit for work, albeit I am sat in my dining room in my office space, but at the same time, then I can then have a defined moment where I can then go get changed, and that is work left behind. And it's something that I tend to do, which definitely works. Yeah, it's really, really good for mental health and well-being, and you feel better as well for it.
Yeah, my husband
Definitely.
laughs at me because yeah, absolutely. I spray perfume on my way to my office. He's like, really? Who? I'm like, I know, but in my head, and it is, I think of it, it is that whole, isn't it? And whatever it is that you need to do, because I would normally have done that in the way out the door in the morning. So, yeah, it's the wee things sometimes that can make all the difference to just make you feel like you're ready, you're prepared, and again, you're off to work as well, isn't it? Again, not everybody wants to do that as well, so it is just finding out, and everybody's very, very different about it, aren't they? So
Yeah, and this is the thing with this standard, it's small changes, right? We're not expecting clients to move mountains within adoption of the standard. It could be a series of small changes, and the changes that can be made can be different for different aspects or different risks, so and different members of staff as well. So there's lots of different ways to approach it. And talking about the physical aspects of it as well. Not only do mental psych or psychosocial risk create physical risk, but also the other way around. You might notice changes in physical safety due to mental issues of not thinking clearly, not approaching a job in a way that they should because they're clouded mentally. And the construction industry is a prime example of this because most construction sites are not exactly, I wouldn't exactly take my children to play there. They're quite dangerous. And having a clear mind and good mental health is quite pivotal in these areas. So on this next page, we're going to have a few examples of how mental health can really, mental health can affect you physically. And accidents and incidents, not thinking, taking a slight deviation from a routine just because your mind isn't there, walking the wrong way, not putting the PPE on properly. These are all different factors that could impact you due to poor mental health. Stress, depression, the speed in which somebody works, the speed in which somebody moves, can lead to lack of sleep as well, and lack of mental clarity, slower reactions, lack of focus. These are all things, especially the sleep. Typically, with depression and anxiety, can bring on insomnia, and obviously with mental health, a lot of conditions can then develop into other mental health conditions. So it's about making sure that none of them impact their physical safety on site as well, which is why it's so closely tied to ISO 45001, which looks at hazard identification and assessment of risk as well. And men in the construction industry are 3 times more likely to die from suicide than the national average of men. And I think this is just a culture about talking. I think talking's key. And even if there are members of staff that still don't feel comfortable talking, it's about what we were talking about earlier, which is empowering your staff to be able to identify if there's any changes in somebody's behavior and get them raised, and have an appropriate communication channel to do so. So now there's going to be a few more stats here, more about the financial side of things and how mental health can affect financially. And obviously introducing ISO 45003 and the controls that requires or suggests is going to help towards some of these. We're not going to say it's going to be the be-all answer to everything, but it should help with things such as things raised on the screen right here. So there's research done by Deloitte, which revealed that the total cost of poor mental health has raised in 2019 by since 2019 by 25%. Obviously, there's been external factors such as the pandemic and things like that that have affected a lot of people, cost of living crisis. These are all sort of aspects that have potentially caused psychosocial risk to a lot of employees. But that's costing us up to £56 billion a year, and that is a big cost. There's an average of £1 spent for every £1 that you'll spend on an employee. The employers will make £5.30 back. So it is there is a financial benefit to this as well. That yes, admittedly, there is going to be a cost around certain controls and certain aspects relating to psychosocial risk. Back is there. If it's going to reduce the amount of time that the staff are going to be taking off, if it's going to increase their performance, because somebody with very good mental health and very good mental clarity is potentially going to be operating in a more efficient way, also working with the business. But yeah, it'll improve morale as well. I definitely feel that the communications and the challenges and things that I've experienced in multiple jobs to address mental health have definitely we've seen an increase in employee engagement, and definitely an increase in morale. So within that team spirit and getting everyone to talk, admittedly, it's not going to be possible everywhere. Everyone's going to want to be involved. That's just human nature. But having the option there and making it clear to all your staff that there is options and avenues to be able to address certain things. What are the benefits of ISO 45003? So ISO 45003, first of all, it's built on an XSL structure, which means it closely aligns with existing standards that are out there. So if you have an existing ISO standard, quite a lot of the actual ISO 45003 will be covered off in other standards. It's built on the same framework. The only addition within ISO 45003, well, there's a few additions. There's return to work and there's the addressing of psychosocial risk. So there is a little bit of work to do if you wanted to add this to your portfolio of standards, but it's not like starting a whole standard from scratch because it is built on other standards, especially 45001. So what it does, it helps to protect your people. If you're going to be identifying factors and issues and psychosocial risks out there, and you're going to be identifying them early, not only is it helping the business perform better, but it's also protecting your staff and it's giving your staff that knowledge that they are being looked after. It shows leadership and commitment to employee health and well-being. So employee health and well-being is becoming more and more a talked about subject in the last 5 or 10 years. It's definitely becoming a factor within most health and safety management systems. And to hear the term mental health first aider, which is definitely different from a mental first aider, but a mental health first aider, it's becoming more and more of a common position within companies, and the resources then being allocated, which shows leadership's commitment to employee health and well-being. As we've already said, it boosts productivity and engagement. There's an element of monitoring and measuring and catering for staff's individual needs within ISO 45003, because the controls aren't generic like potentially a health and safety management system. They may be tailored to individual staff. So you may have like a plan, a mental health and well-being or psychosocial risk assessment for an individual staff member. you might need to consider whether a staff member needs to come on light duties and have some form of return to work in place. You might also want to consider emergency situations. Emergency situations ever so slightly different within 45,003 as they are in other standards. A prime example of this, I was doing a consultancy coming to a couple of years ago now, and the majority of the workforce were actually from the Ukraine, and it was just as the war in Ukraine was starting, so their mental health and well-being of their staff was wanting to put this in place to be able to help manage and maintain, and the war in Ukraine was a prime example of an emergency situation. There's lots of different examples of emergency situations, and the thing is with this standard is it is dependent on the individual person what they determine is an emergency situation. So it needs to be adaptable, and you need to have controls which can be tailored as well. It cuts absenteeism and saves money, which we've already spoken about. Enhances the reputation of your company. It's definitely something that's been talked about alongside environmental performance and being sustainable. Sustainability, it also feeds into sustainability management systems and looking into, your staff performance and how sustainable you are as a company with retention as well. So that feeds in. Hi, Kirsty. Yes, there will be a recording of this. It's being recorded right now, so there will be a copy of it. I'm sure Faye will be able to give you more details on that. But you should, I believe, you receive a link, or you can request one. What's the answer to that, Faye?
There'll be a follow-up, and so yep, you can request that. I'll make a note of it, but when there's a follow-up, then the recording can be forwarded on to you.
Okay, there you go. No problem. It improves recruitment and retention. I've just spoken about that. For more than willing to be looking into to companies that are catering for mental health and well-being as well. It also helps with legal compliance. Obviously, there's a lot of legal and compliance obligations that a lot of companies have to be aware of, and being able to consider psychosocial risk and looking into psychosocial risk is also something that needs to be considered. So it helps with legal compliance. And it's current. It is very current, both in the social world and also within the ISO world. It's a relatively new standard. It's a couple of years old now, which is new within the ISO world. And it also affects out of hours, out of working. It helps staff in the personal life as well. So it's definitely a great management system, and it's by far, we shouldn't say this, but it's one of my standards, favorite standards to consult on and to implement. I do like it. Okay. So more than half of employees said they would like to do more to improve staff well-being, and they don't feel they have the right training. So I say 45,003 will plug that gap. So it is a best practice framework. So it is a guidance standard, and it does help organizations all over the world be able to improve and implement controls and monitoring and measuring processes to address psychosocial risk and increase mental health and well-being. It is also a great risk management tool, and one of the most common things that I tend to talk about on consultancies is think outside with and referring back to the 45,001 again and talking about physical risk is the mental health and safety risk is so vast, and there are so many different factors to consider, that being able to just sit down and have a discussion with somebody, which is recommended by the standard itself, is great for risk management. It addresses so many additional risks that you potentially wouldn't consider, that I think is fantastic. I think it's such a really good management system. Again, as I've probably referenced multiple times throughout this, it's standard builds on 45,001. You'll notice if you do have 45,001, it is so closely aligned to that, with the exception of a couple of clauses within the standard. So if you've got the 45,001, it should be a docket here to implement 45,003. and especially if you're a citation health and safety client as well. The controls that you'll have in place for the citation health and safety management system will easily feed into 45,001 or 45,003 as well. So yeah, it's easily combinable as well. So because a lot of the controls are shared, built on this Annex SL structure, it's quite easy for you to be able to implement. Why is it important? It's becoming more and more popular. It's definitely one thing that it's doing. I'm starting to see it a lot more. A lot of people talk about it, and it demonstrates that workers are a priority. Workers aren't a number, and they are considered, and they're human beings, and they have needs and expectations as well. Pretty much every standard talks about the needs and expectations of interested parties, and your staff and your management and your teams that you have are a part of it as well. And by committing to the mental well-being of your employees, you can help create a strong, healthy, and happy workforce. Yes, the conversation, the talking, the reporting, the awareness, being able to provide resource that staff members require, all feeds into a strong and healthy workforce. So there's lots of controls which you can put in place. When it comes to specific controls, it's entirely up to yourself. Like I say, it is a guidance standard that we do offer certification for, but there's lots of different pathways to be able to get certification based on what psychosocial risks you've identified. So there isn't one way to do it. I think a lot of companies that I've definitely done consultancies on within the last 2 or 3 years, I have had to do a lot of looking at internal processes, procedures, and policies, and be able to adapt them. It's not like they've been rewriting a whole management system, but there may be things and processes that are done that might need tweaking to assist with mental health. One of the worst things to hear as an auditor is, "Oh, we've always done it that way," which unfortunately, especially within mental health and well-being, doesn't work. There needs to be adjustments, there needs to be changes, and there needs to be the flexibility of change. Change management is key in much every ISO standard. So being able to adapt what you currently got to be able to include mental health and well-being is also a quite important aspect of ISO 45003. Okay, how do you become certified in ISO 45003? So like I've been saying, it is a guidance standard, but we do offer a bespoke certificate and will demonstrate your compliance with this. And here at Citation ISO Certification Limited, we have multiple processes in which we have 2 processes in which you can go down to achieve certification. So our premium service is we will come in, we would spend a bit of time with you, look at your current processes and procedures, and we would effectively complete, we internally call a checklist, externally it's a gap analysis. We need to look at where you are current state against where the guidance standard says you need to be. And what we would potentially do at that point is raise tasks to plug these gaps. These tasks are going to have a level of importance aligned with them, and they'll either need to be carried out prior to certification or within certification, depending on what they are. But typically, we have a technical team, we have myself, a technical specialist. We're there to help and provide support throughout that process. And once all of these tasks have been completed, we can then potentially award you certification with something called a pre-certification audit, which will attend an appointment with you, whether it be via Teams or on site, and we would check any tasks that are outstanding, make sure that these are in place, evidence, and then award you a certification. The other route that we offer is also if you already have an existing health and safety management system, or you feel that you have something in place that would align with the requirements of 45003, we can complete something called a compliance audit, which we would audit you directly against the standard, which is a one appointment, where we would carry out an audit of your management system and then provide certification on the end upon successful audit. So there's the 2 ways in which you can become certified with us. And if you do have any inquiries, either additionally about our services or if you want to speak to me directly, anything more, you have any further questions about 45003, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Faye's going to put our contact details somewhere. And you can reach out to myself about 45003 if you need more information on it.
There's a question just come in there, Chris, about accreditation. Are we UKAS accredited yet?
No, we're not, and we are not UCAS accredited. We are accredited to the ASCB. We follow the same guidance standards, and we are audited to the same standards as UCAS. But our accreditation body is the ASCB. So there's multiple accreditation bodies. There's another question coming. Yes, there will be costs associated with our services. What the cost is depends on what your needs are. If you want more information, that feel free to reach out, and I can put you in contact with a relevant department to be able to give you more information and have a conversation about it. Okay, further learning as well. These webinars, we conduct them quite frequently around different subjects around ISO. And I think there's a schedule somewhere where you can check about our workshops that are coming up. But there's going to be multiple ones carried out throughout the year, but we also offer something called ISO Mentor. So ISO Mentor is our interactive learning experience that we've created, which is made up of multiple virtual training workshops, a little bit like this webinar now, where we will break down a specific standard or a specific subject with context within a standard, except that the group's considerably smaller and there's a lot more interaction. When you sign up with ISO Mentor, you can see the schedule for the coming months, and you can sign up for any workshop that you would like to join. And there's a few content topics there. Apologies, I'm reading the comments as well. I'm coming over. So there's context and interested parties. There's leadership and responsibilities, risks and opportunities and objectives, resource competence, operational planning, and we also offer multiple standards as well. There's lots of different virtual workshops for different standards. And I must say, it's a great service. I wish I had something like that when I was introducing my first ISO management system. Definitely.
Would have been handy. Tiffany's just asking the cost for ISO Mentor, but we'll probably again just need to be an individual kind of.
Yeah. More than welcome to and you can give me a shout and put you in the right direction. I'll do it at the end. But yeah, it depends on the size of your organization, how many intended users that you want. There's a standard fee structure per user. I don't have it burnt into my brain yet, but I will be able to find out for you. Let me just have a look at a few of these questions. The accreditation we have is with the ASCB. Just looking through, no problem.
I think you've managed to pick up most of them, to be fair, Chris. I've been keeping an eye, but I think
so
picked up most
of them. It's the same questions around UCAS and ASCB. UCAS is it's a different accreditation body. That's all it is. I've come from a UCAS background, so I'm familiar with those. What else is in? There's everything. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that's all the questions for now.
I think you've covered all your questions at the moment.
Yeah.
One other one came in the question and answer section, and it's around and about tendering, because obviously we see a lot more ISOs being requested now in a tendering process and things. Is this one that's going to again pop up, do you think, sometime soon?
I mean, I can't predict what's going to be picking up. In the past, I've noticed that more ISO standards are being added or being requested within tender, especially. There was one point where it was just ISO 9001, and then now there's been the introduction of ISO 14001. I suppose it depends on how society moves and how knowledge and understanding of the standards grows. And especially things like there's been a lot of movements in the world around being sustainable, especially within the UK. There's been a lot of movements around environmental performance. So I'm noticing in some tenders and tender applications that 14,000 was keeping up. The same with health and safety. Potentially, there may be requirements for mental health and wellbeing controls and mental health first aiders. Again, I can't give you a definitive answer because I don't know. Tenders can be either industry specific or client specific, what their specific needs are. So yes, there's a chance it could come up, but I can't give you a definitive answer on that.
Yeah, no, I think, and I think that's it. We are seeing it more and more across the board, aren't we? Just from the tendering process that there is a requirement to have. I think just it's obviously it's a recognised standard, so people that want to to have that definitely.
Yep.
There's another question there. It says, with regards to remote work, increasingly we're seeing more companies push to return to office, often to the detriment of employees. How does ISO 45003 approach this to weigh the pros and cons?
So when it comes to a specific identification of psychosocial risk, there isn't anything within the standard that says you need to specifically consider this. When it comes to psychosocial risk, it's up to the organisation to determine themselves what the psychosocial risks are. So there is a section within the standard that talks about return to work and please return to work. Typically, it's more related to if there has been a serious psychosocial risk, like an emergency situation. I suppose that section of the standard could be applied to returning to the office. Obviously, it's a change in environment, it's something that can affect mental health and well-being. So there is a whole section that does talk about this and saying that it does recommend that should there be any change to either a working environment or any change to someone's psychosocial risk or mental health and well-being, that they should consider a return to work and phase return to work. And then again, the controls within that section are up to the organisation to address. So yes. So how does it? So yeah. So it doesn't really address it. I suppose when you're looking at any standard, within that standard itself, it talks about what was in the last slide, which is context the organisation, and that is looking at internal and external factors that can affect the business internally. From that, what you would need to do then is assess business risk. So not only is the risk affecting staff and their well-being and their performance, but then it could potentially be affecting business performance as well, and it could potentially bring a risk. So it should be considered. Does the standard tell you you need to consider it? No. Is my opinion that it should be considered? Yes. Not certified to my opinion though. So when it comes down to the standard, there's a lot of interpretation with a lot of the standards themselves. So yes, there are sections that address that. But is it a requirement of the standard? It's up to you. Is the answer. And I'm sorry to be so vague on that. Yeah.
Oh, we've lost you there, Chris.
Have we gone?
Oh, that's better. Yep. You just disappeared there for a sec.
Okay.
Jill's popped in there as well. We've recently participated in a tender, and mental health and wellbeing was a key area to respond on.
Fantastic. I mean, I've not done a tender application for years, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, that's good to know. That's definitely good to know that it's part of it. Well, if that is the case, whether they're asking specifically for ISO 45003, because it's a guidance standard, they might not, but they might ask if you have controls, and ISO 45003 helps with implementing them controls. So yeah, and Dan, yeah, I'm more than happy to. I'll put my email in the chat, and you can fire me over any questions that you have, if that's okay. Benefits of ISO Mentor. Right, sorry, going back to the slides. So ISO Mentor, I know that somebody commented within, thank you for your comment. I noticed within here, you said that you do recommend ISO Mentor. It's fantastic. It's a great learning tool. You can pick it up throughout the year. You can pick and choose sessions you want to attend. You can attend the session multiple times. You can have multiple members of staff who can join and be involved. I think one of the key areas of any ISO management system is for you to be able to share roles and responsibilities and really integrate it as part of a management system. And if the more people that you have signed up for Mentor and working on ISO Mentor, the more understanding you're going to have across the organization and the more skills relating to ISO you're going to improve. So it's great for anyone starting the business as well. It's definitely a really good induction to say, this is the certification we have, this is what we're achieving, and a couple of sessions and you'll get a general understanding how ISO will affect your individual job itself. So guidance, yes, it is a guidance standard. There's multiple guidance standards. So at Citation, we have opted to provide a service we're allowed to under our accreditation body to be able to provide consultancy and certification based on it. So it's a compliance certification on a like 9, 14 and 45. I hope that cleared that up for you.
Sounds
no
like
problem.
it.
Yeah, just double checking. Sorry, I'm loitering, just watching the questions and answers. We do have a few useful links. I appreciate you probably can't click on them, but by all means, if you want these links, you can contact me as well, me or Faye. But these are a few useful links. There's more about ISO 45003. There's more information there about ISO Mentor. And then also we have an online Atlas hub that works on the health and safety side, the HR, employment law, and also within ISO, it's a one-stop shop for all of our products and services, and we can implement ISO management systems through your Atlas login. Right, now, questions. I know that we've probably been through a few and answered them already. And what I'll do is I'll put my...
I was going to say, do you want to pop your email address in there,
Yeah.
Chris, and then people can pick that up. Brilliant. You've sent it just to panelists. See if you click on where it says to, if you need to select panelists and attendees.
Okay,
Yep.
I will put that back in, so I'll send that to everyone.
Everyone can see it.
Just putting my email in the chat for anyone that has any. Admittedly, when somebody says, have you got any more questions? The chances are in 10 minutes, one will pop up in your head and I'll be long gone. So if you do have any questions, and Dan, if you want to reach out to me regards to certification, I can the ball rolling for you on that, or at least answer any questions that you have about our processes in a little more detail. More than happy to do so. So there is, oh, I've spelled my email wrong. That's a great start.
Yeah, if anybody has got further questions as well, Chris is popping in his details there. Please do pop them in, and is chris.case@citation.co.uk. You've got that if you need it. And like Chris says, you know, if you go away from today and think, oh, I should have asked that or whatever else, then please do reach out and engage with us, and can certainly pick that up with you. Similarly, if you want to see some demonstration of any of the system or anything like that as well, so that you know you have a better feel for how that would work, and how the benefits that you could get from it, then please do let us know, because I'm sure somebody's more than happy to show you that. But yeah, I hope it's been helpful, and please do pop. I'm just keeping a wee eye on the question and answer as well.
There's a question, there's one that's just come in. Yeah, so going back to the same answer that I gave about the return to work, there isn't any specific requirements. So the requirements of any ISO management system, apart from any specific industry like information security, they will want the process in place for you to address certain aspects. So, for example, we're talking about mental health conditions. In audits that I've done in the past, have I seen specific controls relating to mental health conditions? Yes, I have. Does the standard state that you specifically need to do that? No. What the standard will state is that you need to be able to identify psychosocial risks. And psychosocial risk can form part of there's lots of different ways to address it. I know in the past, taking into account religion, political views and things, and being aware that incidents such as like Ramadan We wouldn't have members of staff taking their breaks in the canteen, being around people eating food at a time like that. So there's lots of different aspects. Mental health conditions obviously being one of them, as long with physical conditions as well, like we spoke about earlier. Physical conditions are definitely to be considered as well as part of this management system. But yeah, there isn't any specific requirement. It's just that you are doing that, you are considering it, and what you consider is entirely up to yourself. Just like business risk would be the same. There's no specific business risk that you need to address, but as a business, you would be aware of your specific risks. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry to be a little vague on it, but that's the thing with these systems. It's about creating a system that works specifically for your needs as a business. Mental health issues seem to raise their head in disciplinary grievances, which really does take a lot of time to deal with. Yes, it's true. And it's the conversation. It's opening up that conversation, even if it is disciplinaries or having the opportunity for somebody to tell you why something is wrong. It tends to be the option. It's the same with audits. When I used to be an internal auditor of my business, it wasn't until I went up to an area of the business and failed them would they then tell me that the tools they were using weren't good enough. And as backwards as that potentially can sound, it opened up the avenue of communication for me then to report that upwards and say, we failed an audit here, but the equipment isn't efficient. And it's the communication side of it. Like I said at the beginning, it's letting everybody know that there is avenues in which they can communicate and empowering the staff to be able to identify and communicate it between themselves. So yeah, no problem, Daniel. All the best. And so yeah, thanks for that, Lynn. I believe that is everything.
I was going to say, I think just, absolutely what you were saying there, that it's each individual scenario on its own merit, isn't it? And when it's something like this, you can't preempt exactly what's going to, much as we'd like to, but human beings are human beings, whether we like it or not. So you've got to deal with it individually as it comes up, most definitely. Yeah. Great. Okay. We've got one more slide there, Chris.
I think it's the finish slide, and there you go.
Oh, there you go. I thought for some reason in my head we had something else, but there you go. Great. Anything else you've got to add? Sorry, Chris.
No, I mean, if I've put my email in the chat, if anyone's wanting to give me a shout to talk to me about whether it's this standard, other standards, I specialize in quite a lot of standards as well. If you've got anything ISO related, give me. I'm happy to help you with that. Anything at all related to Atlas, just give me a shout. My email's there. Use it. No problem.
Brilliant. Equally, if you want somebody to, there will be follow-up to today's webinar, but if you want somebody to contact you directly sooner rather than later, then please do put that in the chat just now, because more than happy to pick that up with you straight away. That's not an issue, because we do appreciate things like this do tend to create a bit of question and, food for thought and all the rest of it. So please do let us know and we can easily pick that up with you. No problems whatsoever. Happy to do that. Or as I said earlier, like you see systems or anything like that, not an issue whatsoever. So we can, you've got to have a comparison. You've got to be able to see the benefits to your organisation, versus the costs and all the rest of it. So by all means, ask away, because we will happily speak to you and go through that with you. No problem at all.
No problem. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We wish you all the best in your ISO journeys, and maybe see you again in a future webinar.
Most definitely. Thanks. Yeah, Chris and I will hang around for a few minutes. If anybody does have anything further, that's absolutely fine to ask away. Just as well, guys, as you log off, you will get a short survey. It's literally seconds. If you don't mind just answering that, it's just again about what we run in the future, and what people might want to see. So it's really beneficial to help us with that too, so we know what you want. We have got a host of things we can run, but we want to be making sure we're running the things that meet with your needs and that you're needing help with. So please do take the minute to fill in that survey for us. It'd be very much appreciated, and helpful, and it will help mould the programme going forward as well. So I know a couple of you mentioned about more webinars and stuff, so make sure that you are engaging with us, and that we can, we're then communicating out to you, so if there's further things coming up that you might be interested in, different topics and whatever else. So please do make sure that we've got the most up-to-date email address and everything for you, to ensure that you're on that communication list, and you can pick up as and when you want to, and that'd be great. But as Chris said, thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, Chris, for taking us through all that. Lots of food for thought and lots of information, and lots of really good stuff. So very much appreciated. Okay, and we will stay around for a second or two if there is anything else. But thanks for joining us, guys, and enjoy